The morning unfolded slowly, as if the land itself was reluctant to disturb what lay beside the dry riverbed. Dust drifted in thin layers over cracked earth, settling on thorn bushes and pale stones. A small group of rangers and nearby villagers stood at a careful distance, their footsteps softened by instinct. No one rushed forward. No one raised a voice. At first, it was impossible to tell whether the lion was alive or already claimed by the quiet stillness around him. His body lay stretched along the shallow bank, mane dulled by sand, ribs faintly visible beneath tight skin. Only when the wind shifted did a shallow rise appear along his flank, so slight it could easily be mistaken for illusion. They watched without speaking, reading the smallest signs the way years of experience had taught them. The lion's chest lifted again, uneven and delayed, followed by a fragile release of air through his nostrils. One ear twitched, barely, as if responding to distant insects or shifting grass. His tail lay motionless, curved in a tired arc against the ground. The heat had pressed heavily through the night, draining what little moisture remained in the soil, and the riverbed had offered no relief. Around him, flies hovered in cautious circles, never settling for long. His eyes remained closed, but the muscles around them tightened now and then, revealing discomfort rather than rest. The rangers moved closer in slow increments, each step measured, each breath controlled. They lowered themselves to the ground several meters away, keeping their bodies small and unthreatening. One of them whispered, almost without sound, "Easy, boy." The words were not meant to command or comfort in any dramatic way. They were simply a reminder of presence, of calm intention. The lion responded only with a faint shift of his jaw and a soft rasp of breath. His whiskers trembled. A low vibration passed through his throat, not a growl, not a call, but the strained movement of air through exhaustion. From this distance, signs of injury became clearer. A darkened patch marked his hind leg, dried blood tracing into the dust. His shoulders sagged unnaturally, as though strength had slowly drained from them over days. Yet life remained stubborn within him. A front paw curled slightly inward. His breathing, though shallow, found a fragile rhythm. The people remained still, allowing trust to form in silence. No sudden gestures followed, no urgent commands. Only patience, steady observation, and quiet respect guided their presence. Above them, clouds thinned into pale streaks and sunlight filtered gently across the riverbed, touching the lion's mane with soft gold as his breath continued, uneven, fragile, but still there. Time passed in quiet layers, measured not by minutes but by breaths and subtle movement. The lion remained where he was, pressed into the pale dust, yet his body no longer appeared entirely still. A faint tremor moved through his flank. His tail shifted once, dragging a thin line across the ground before falling back into place. It was a small gesture, almost accidental, but it carried meaning for those watching. It was proof that awareness still lived inside him, that pain had not fully closed his connection to the world around him. His breathing grew more uneven as the sun climbed higher. Each inhale seemed to require effort, lifting his chest in slow, strained arcs. The exhale followed with a thin, rasping sound that disappeared into the open air. When a gust of wind brushed his mane, he stirred again, eyelids fluttering without fully opening. The muscles along his shoulders tightened briefly, then relaxed, as if even resistance had become too heavy to maintain. His injured leg lay at an awkward angle, slightly twisted beneath him, swollen and stiff. The wound had darkened further, dust clinging to dried blood and torn fur. The group remained where they were, offering nothing but stillness. They understood that movement, even gentle, could shatter fragile balance. After some time, one figure separated quietly from the others. The local wildlife rescuer moved forward in slow, deliberate steps, keeping his body low, his posture open. In one hand he carried a small container of water. In the other, nothing at all. No tools. No restraints. Only patience. He paused often, allowing the lion to register his presence without pressure. When he reached a respectful distance, he knelt and placed the container on the ground, sliding it forward inch by inch. The water inside reflected light softly, trembling with each careful motion. "It's okay," he murmured, barely louder than the wind. The words were not meant to persuade. They were meant to exist gently in the space between them. The lion reacted slowly. His nostrils widened, drawing in unfamiliar scent. One eye opened halfway, revealing a dull amber gaze clouded by fatigue. It did not focus immediately. Instead, it drifted across shapes and shadows, testing the safety of what surrounded him. His ears angled forward, then relaxed. A weak rumble passed through his chest, more breath than sound. After several long moments, his head shifted slightly toward the water. The movement was small, costing visible effort, but it carried intention. No one moved closer. No one reached out. The rescuer remained still, hands resting against the ground, breathing evenly. The silence between them became a form of communication. Trust did not arrive suddenly. It gathered slowly, built from absence of threat, from repeated proof that nothing would be forced. The lion's tongue touched his lips once, dry and hesitant. His breathing steadied just enough to find a fragile rhythm again. Around them, grass stirred softly along the riverbed's edge. Insects hummed in low, distant patterns. The sun continued its steady climb, painting long shadows across the land. Between dust and light, between exhaustion and quiet human presence, something delicate began to take shape. Not rescue yet, not safety, but the first thin thread of connection, held together by patience and silence. The stillness that had settled around the riverbed began to change in subtle ways. It was no longer only the quiet of waiting, but the quiet of decision. The lion's breathing had grown heavier, each rise of his chest followed by a longer pause, as though his body hesitated before continuing. His injured leg had stiffened further, swelling pushing against torn skin. When he tried to adjust his weight, a strained sound escaped him, low and involuntary, and his body shuddered before sinking back into the dust. The rescuer watched closely, reading each movement as carefully as a map. He saw the tightening of the lion's jaw, the slight flare of his nostrils, the tension gathering beneath tired muscles. Pain was no longer something the animal could hide through stillness. It was becoming visible in the smallest gestures. The lion's tail lifted once, snapping weakly against the ground. His ears pinned back for a brief moment. One eye opened wider now, tracking every shift in the humans nearby. At first, these signs carried warning. Not aggression but instinctive protection. Even weakened, the lion remained aware of his strength. His head lifted slightly, mane sliding across his shoulder. A low sound gathered in his throat, unfinished and fragile, more breath than threat. The message was simple: distance still mattered. Space was still necessary. The rescuer responded by doing nothing at all. He remained where he was, posture unchanged, gaze softened and unfixed. He adjusted his breathing to remain slow and steady. When he spoke again, it was barely audible. "You're all right," he whispered, more for rhythm than reassurance. The words drifted away almost immediately, leaving silence behind them. Minutes passed. The sun shifted. Shadows shortened. The lion's warning posture weakened as exhaustion reclaimed his body. His head lowered. His ears relaxed. The sound in his throat faded into another uneven breath. When pain surged again through his leg, he did not attempt to rise. Instead, he pressed his chin gently against the ground, accepting the weight of gravity. This change did not go unnoticed. The rescuer moved one hand slowly forward, stopping often, letting the lion see every motion. His palm hovered above the dust, never reaching. He placed another small container nearby, filled with diluted electrolyte water prepared earlier. He did not push it closer this time. He trusted the lion to choose. The animal watched, eyes half open, following the movement without panic. His breathing steadied slightly. After a long pause, he shifted his front paw and nudged the container by accident. The soft sound it made did not startle him. Instead, he leaned forward and licked the edge once, then again, drawing small amounts of liquid into his mouth. Around him, the air seemed to loosen. No one celebrated. No one whispered excitedly. The villagers and rangers remained quiet, allowing the moment to exist without pressure. The rescuer stayed low, close enough now to see the fine tremors in the lion's whiskers, the shallow rise and fall of his ribs. Trust had not erased fear. Pain had not disappeared. But something essential had changed. The lion no longer pulled away from presence. He no longer braced for harm. He rested within it, accepting calm, touchless companionship as his body fought to remain steady. Above them, thin clouds drifted across a pale sky. A distant bird called once, then fell silent. Between earth and breath, between suffering and patience, a fragile connection held, quiet, uncertain, but real. The afternoon unfolded with a fragile balance, held together by slow breathing and careful distance. The lion remained grounded against the riverbed, his strength narrowed to small movements and shallow rhythms. The rescuer stayed near, silent and attentive, while the others formed a loose circle farther back, blending into the landscape as much as possible. Nothing was forced. Nothing was rushed. Yet beneath the calm, uncertainty lingered. Suspended in every uneven breath, the lion released into the warm air. It began with a sound that did not belong to the wind. At first it was distant and low, rolling across the plains like distant thunder. A long, resonant vibration traveled through the ground before reaching the ears. Then it came again, closer this time, carrying weight and direction. A roar. Not sharp, not threatening, but heavy with recognition and warning. The villagers stiffened slightly. The rangers exchanged quiet glances. No one moved. The lion reacted first. His ears lifted. His head rose a few inches, trembling under effort. His eyes opened wider than they had since morning, focus sharpening through exhaustion. A soft, broken sound escaped his throat, answering without strength. His tail shifted weakly. Despite pain and fatigue, instinct stirred within him, connecting him to something beyond the riverbed. Minutes later, shapes began to appear at the edge of the grass. They moved slowly, deliberately, bodies flowing through tall stems with controlled silence. One form emerged, then another, then several more. Broad shoulders. Tawny coats. Alert eyes reflecting light. Members of the pride had arrived, drawn by sound, absence, and instinctive awareness that something was wrong. They spread out naturally, forming a loose arc around the scene, keeping distance but claiming presence. Their behavior carried no immediate aggression. Heads remained level. Tails swayed low and steady. Ears angled forward then relaxed. They studied everything: the fallen male, the humans, the containers, the quiet posture of the rescuer. One lioness stepped forward slightly, stopping well short of the group. She lowered her head, inhaling deeply, scenting the air. Her gaze lingered on the injured lion, then shifted toward the humans, then back again. The rescuer remained motionless. He slowly withdrew his hands to his sides, lowering his gaze in a gesture of non-confrontation. His breathing stayed calm, visible in the gentle rise of his shoulders. No tools were lifted. No gestures made. He became part of the stillness. A ranger murmured softly from behind, "Stay calm." The words barely carried. The pride responded not with attack, but with vigilance. They settled into positions, some sitting, others standing. One circled slowly, maintaining distance. Another lay down, forelegs extended, watching without blinking. Their attention remained constant, layered with caution and recognition. They could sense unfamiliar presence. They could also sense restraint. The injured lion released a long, trembling breath. One lioness approached a little closer, stopping several meters away. She lowered her head and touched the ground with her nose, then lifted it again toward him. A quiet chuff passed between them, almost inaudible. His ears flicked in response. His eyes softened slightly. The space between humans and animals held steady. No side advanced. No side retreated. Instead, understanding formed through stillness. Danger existed. So did care. Both were recognized. Both were respected. Above them, the sky stretched wide and pale. Grass whispered under a passing breeze. In that suspended moment, surrounded by watchful family and quiet human presence, the injured lion lay breathing, fragile, protected, and no longer alone. Evening approached in slow, golden layers, softening the sharp edges of the land. The heat loosened its grip, replaced by a gentler warmth that drifted across the riverbed. The pride remained nearby, still and attentive, while the rescuers completed their careful work. Medication had been administered. The wound had been cleaned and protected as much as possible without force. Every movement had been deliberate, quiet, and restrained. Nothing had been done quickly. Nothing had been done without permission earned through patience. Now there was nothing left to add. The injured lion lay quietly, breathing deeper than before, though still uneven. His eyes remained half open, tracking the shifting light and the shapes of those around him. The swelling in his leg was still visible, but the tension in his body had eased slightly, as if pain had loosened its hold just enough to allow rest. His chest rose and fell with more consistency. A soft sound escaped him once, low and steady, carried gently into the air. The rescuer slowly began to withdraw. He shifted backward inch by inch, keeping his movements visible and calm. The others followed, stepping away in wide arcs, careful not to break the fragile sense of safety that had formed. No one turned their back. No one hurried. They created space without abandoning presence. The pride noticed. One lioness rose first, unfolding her body with quiet strength. She walked toward the injured male and stopped close enough for her whiskers to brush his mane. Another followed, then a third. They surrounded him loosely, forming a living shelter. Their bodies radiated warmth and familiarity. One lowered her head and nudged his shoulder gently. Another stood behind him, steady and watchful. The lion responded slowly. He gathered himself in stages. First, his front legs shifted. Then his shoulders lifted slightly before sinking back down. He rested, breathing through the effort. After a long pause, he tried again. His forelegs pushed against the ground, muscles trembling under strain. His hind leg followed reluctantly, stiff and uncertain. A soft sound passed through his throat as he adjusted his balance. For a moment it seemed he might collapse. But he did not. With the support of his pride and the strength gathered from stillness, he rose. His body swayed, correcting itself in small, careful movements. He stood unevenly, weight shifted away from the injured leg, head lowered, mane brushing his chest. Dust fell from his fur in pale clouds. His breathing quickened, then steadied. The pride closed in around him. They did not rush. They did not crowd. They simply stayed close, matching his pace, ready to support without forcing. Together they turned slowly toward the open plains. The humans remained where they were. No cameras lifted. No voices rose. They watched in silence as the group began to move. Step by step, the lions walked away from the riverbed, their forms growing smaller against the widening land. The injured male moved carefully but steadily, guided by familiar bodies and shared rhythm. As the sun lowered, light spilled across the grass in deep amber waves. Shadows stretched long and thin. The pride blended gradually into distance, their outlines softening until they became part of the horizon itself. Long after they disappeared, the rescuers stayed. They stood quietly, listening to wind move through dry stems, watching the last light fade from the riverbed. The moment lingered in the stillness, not as triumph, not as spectacle, but as a quiet memory of trust, patience, and a family walking home beneath a widening sky.